The inexorable tore through the fabric of space with the sound of metal screaming against reality itself. Captain Davos Kreel gripped the command chair's armrests as the Star Destroyer lurched violently, emergency klaxons shrieking throughout the bridge. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Officers were thrown from their stations. The familiar blue-white tunnel of hyperspace twisted into something wrong. Colors that shouldn't exist, angles that defied geometry, a kaleidoscope of impossible mathematics. All power to forward shields. Kreel shouted over the chaos. Engineering, report. The comm crackled with static. Sir, the hyperdrive it's fragmenting. The rebel device, it's creating some kind of spatial. The transmission cut off as the inexorable punched through into normal space with a flash that lit up the void like a dying star. Silence fell across the bridge. Emergency lighting cast everything in blood-red shadows. Kreel slowly released his grip and stood, straightening his uniform with practiced discipline even as his heart hammered against his ribs. Damage report. Now. Lieutenant Varys, his sensor officer, worked frantically at her half-functional console. Hull integrity at 78%. Hyperdrive is completely offline, engineering says minimum 2 weeks for repairs, possibly longer. Shield generators holding at 60% capacity. TIE Bay is intact. We have casualties on decks 7 through 12, sir. What about our position? Where are we? Varys looked up, and Kreel saw genuine fear in her eyes. Sir, the NAV computer can't establish our location. None of the star patterns match our charts. Not a single one. It's like she hesitated. Speak freely, Lieutenant. It's like we're not in our galaxy anymore, sir. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kreel's mind raced through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Uncharted space was one thing. But no recognizable stars. No astronomical references whatsoever. Long-range sensors. Coming online now, sir. I'm detecting multiple contacts. Large vessels, heading. Varys' fingers flew across her console. Captain, we have a fleet. 70-plus ships of varying sizes, bearing 237, distance approximately 400,000 kilometers. They're moving at sublight speeds. Configuration. Unknown, sir. Design doesn't match any known rebel, republic, or even separatist vessels. Wait. Varys' eyes widened. Sir, I'm picking up primitive electromagnetic transmissions. Radio waves. They're using radio waves for communication. Kreel felt his tactical mind shifting into gear. Radio waves meant a civilization significantly behind Imperial technology. But 70 ships meant organization, resources, possibly a threat if provoked. Sir, the tactical officer interrupted, the lead vessel is massive. Nearly as large as we are. Detecting weapon systems. Kinetic projectile launchers, some kind of energy weapons, fighter complements. They're altering course. Coming toward us. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. TIE squadrons to ready positions but do not launch. Shields to maximum. Kreel turned to his communications officer. Scan all frequencies. Find out what language they're speaking and get me a translation matrix running immediately. Action stations. Set condition 1 throughout the ship. Admiral William Adama stood in the CIC, hands clasped behind his back, face carved from stone as he watched the Draughties display. The contact had appeared without warning, no jump signature, no radiation trail, just a massive vessel materializing in space like something out of a fever dream. Talk to me, Gaeta, he said, his voice carrying the weight of command earned through decades of service and hardened by weeks of desperate flight. Lieutenant Felix Gaeta worked his console with rapid precision. Sir, the contact is enormous. I'm reading a vessel approximately 1,600 meters in length, triangular configuration. It's unlike anything in colonial records or Cylon design parameters we've encountered. Could it be a new Cylon variant? Colonel Saul Tigh asked from Adama's right, his gruff voice carrying the suspicion that had kept them alive this long. Possible, Gaeta admitted. But sir, the energy signatures are all wrong. This thing isn't using Tilium for power. I'm detecting some kind of fusion reactor output that's off our scale. And the weapons. Admiral, I count hundreds of what appear to be heavy turbolaser batteries. If those are functional, this ship could glass a planet. Adama's jaw tightened. After the fall, after the Cylons had annihilated the 12 colonies and reduced humanity to 50,000 desperate survivors fleeing through space, he'd learned to prepare for the worst. This unknown vessel appearing near his fleet was either salvation or extinction. Launch the alert Vipers. Combat air patrol only, no aggressive actions unless fired upon. Get me President Roslin. She's already on her way to CIC, sir, Tigh confirmed. The wireless crackled to life. Galactica Actual, this is Apollo. We're launching now. Sir, please tell me that's a friendly. Captain Lee, Apollo, Adama's voice carried his father's same steadiness, tempered by the desperate hope they all felt whenever something new appeared in the endless black. Unknown, Apollo. Maintain defensive formation. Watch for fighters launching from that vessel, my guess is they'll have hundreds. Understood, Galactica. Apollo out. President Laura Roslin entered CIC, her face drawn but composed. The former Secretary of Education had become the unlikely leader of humanity's remnants, and the burden showed in every line around her eyes. Admiral, she said simply. Madam President. Adama gestured to the Draughties display. We have a situation. Roslin studied the screen, then looked at Adama with the same calm she'd shown during every crisis since the fall. Are they responding to our hails? Not yet. We've tried all standard frequencies. Nothing. Then perhaps we should try the unconventional. Gaeta, broadcast on all EM bands, radio, microwave, everything we have. Audio and visual. Let them see us. Yes, Madam President. Adama appreciated Roslin's pragmatism. In a universe that had killed billions of their people, showing their humanity might be the only thing that prevented another massacre. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Multiple frequencies simultaneously. Audio and visual components. Creel leaned forward. On screen. The main viewport flickered, and a woman appeared. Middle-aged, wearing civilian clothing, her expression carefully neutral. Behind her stood military personnel in uniforms that looked functional but decidedly archaic, no armor, no helmets, just simple duty dress. The woman spoke in a language the translation computer immediately flagged as unknown. But her tone was measured, diplomatic. She was showing herself deliberately, vulnerability as a form of communication. Translation. Creel demanded. Working, sir. The linguistic matrix is building a database from their transmission patterns. Give me 30 seconds. Creel watched the woman continue speaking. Behind her, he could see what appeared to be a command center, primitive displays, officers at stations, an older man in military uniform standing with the bearing of a career officer. A warrior, Creel recognized. Whatever these people were, they had discipline. Translation matrix online, sir. Replaying transmission. The woman's words suddenly made sense. Unknown vessel, this is President Laura Roslin of the Colonial Fleet. We mean you no harm. We are refugees, survivors of a war that destroyed our homeworlds. We seek only to find a new home in peace. If you can understand this message, please respond. We are willing to meet, to talk, to find common ground. We have had too much war. Please respond. The transmission ended, replaced by what appeared to be technical data, star charts, perhaps, or navigational information. Kreel studied them, noting the unfamiliar constellations, the alien star patterns. "Sir," Vari said quietly, "if they're telling the truth, if they're refugees, their technology is centuries behind ours, but they're organized. That fleet includes civilian vessels, transport ships, agricultural ships, even what looks like a mining operation. This isn't a military armada. It's an exodus." Kreel considered his options. The Empire would expect him to establish dominance, to secure any potential resources, to bring order to chaos. But the Empire was literally galaxies away. His ship was damaged, stranded in unknown space, with a crew of 9,000 and no support, no resupply, no reinforcements. And these people, primitive as they were, represented the only civilization he'd found. "Open a channel. All frequencies, same as they used." "Channel open, sir." Kreel straightened his uniform, very aware that this moment would define everything that followed. "Colonial Fleet, this is Captain Davos Kreel of the Imperial Navy vessel Inexorable. We acknowledge your transmission and your stated intentions. We too seek to avoid unnecessary conflict. However, my vessel has suffered damage and we require time to assess our situation. I propose a meeting between our respective commands to discuss mutual concerns. Transmitting coordinates for a neutral location between our positions." Captain Kreel out. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Keep shields up and weapons hot. This could still be a trap. And get the Inquisitor to the bridge. If these people are somehow connected to the rebel saboteurs who put us here, I want to know." "Yes, sir." Kreel returned his attention to the viewport, where the massive fleet hung in space like a migration of some great wounded beast. 70 ships, refugees fleeing destruction, primitive but organized. The Empire taught that order must be imposed, that strength brought peace, that the weak served the strong. But here, in this impossible place, with no emperor watching, no hierarchy to maintain beyond his own crew's survival. Here, Kreel would have to write his own rules. "I don't like this," Starbuck muttered from the pilot's seat of the Raptor, her hands steady on the controls despite her evident tension. Lieutenant Kara Starbuck Thrace had volunteered for the escort mission with her typical aggressive confidence, but even she couldn't hide her unease. In the passenger compartment, Admiral Adama sat across from President Roslin, both flanked by Marines in full combat gear. Captain Apollo sat beside his father, his expression mirroring Adama's careful neutrality. "Nobody likes it," Adama replied. "But if there's a chance these people can help us, or at least won't attack us, we have to take it. We're barely holding this fleet together as it is." Roslin nodded. Their message was, restrained. Professional. Not threatening. "That ship could destroy the entire fleet in minutes," Ty growled from the co-pilot's seat. "One broadside from those weapons and we're dust." "Which is exactly why they don't need to lie to us," Roslin countered. "If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. They're talking. That means something. Or it means they want to study us before they dissect us," Ty muttered, but he didn't press the point. The Raptor cleared Galactica's defensive perimeter, and suddenly the Imperial Star Destroyer came into full view. "Gods," Starbuck breathed. It was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. The wedge-shaped vessel bristled with weapons emplacements, its surface a geometric pattern of armor plating and sensor arrays. Even damaged, even clearly scarred from whatever had brought it here, the Inexorable radiated power. "That's not Cylon," Apollo said quietly. "The design philosophy is completely different. This is meant to intimidate, to project force. Cylons build efficient killing machines. This is a symbol." "A symbol of what?" Roslin asked. "Empire," Adama answered, his voice grim. "This is what a ship looks like when it's built by a civilization that rules through fear." "Then why are they talking to us?" Roslin pressed. Before anyone could answer, their sensors pinged. A shuttle was launching from the Star Destroyer, sleek, angular, moving with a precision that spoke to advanced maneuvering systems. "That's their diplomatic shuttle," Gaeta's voice crackled over the wireless from Galactica. "2 escorts, small fighters. Raptor 1, you are cleared to proceed to neutral coordinates." "Copy that, Galactica," Starbuck acknowledged. She glanced back at Adama. "Here we go, Admiral. Into the unknown." Again, Adama said with the ghost of a smile. "Story of our lives." The Raptor and the Imperial shuttle converged on a point in space equidistant from both fleets, two emissaries from impossible civilizations meeting in the void, while behind them, thousands of desperate survivors watched and waited to see if this encounter would bring salvation or annihilation. The interior of the Imperial shuttle was exactly what Adama had expected. Efficient, sterile, intimidating. Everything was angular, black and gray, designed to remind visitors that they stood within the machinery of something vast and powerful. Captain Kreel stood as they entered, flanked by two figures in gleaming white armor carrying weapons that looked both elegant and deadly. The captain himself was human, unmistakably so, perhaps 50 years old, with iron-gray hair and the bearing of a career military officer. His uniform was immaculate, black with silver insignia that spoke of rank and authority. But it was the third figure that made Adama's instincts scream warning. Tall, wrapped in black robes, face hidden in shadow beneath a hood. The figure stood perfectly still, hands clasped, but there was something about their presence that felt wrong on a primal level. Like standing too close to a predator. Admiral Adama. President Roslin. Kreel's voice was cultured, controlled. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. May I present my security detail?" He gestured to the stormtroopers. "And Inquisitor Valen, who serves as the Emperor's representative aboard my vessel." The hooded figure inclined their head slightly but said nothing. "Captain Kreel," Roslin replied with diplomatic warmth. "We appreciate your willingness to talk. In our recent experience, shooting has been more common than conversation. A situation I hope to avoid," Kreel said. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." They arranged themselves around a conference table. Imperial efficiency made manifest in metal and angles. Adama kept his attention split between Kreel and the silent Inquisitor, his tactical mind cataloging threats, escape routes, vulnerabilities. Kreel activated a holographic display, actual three-dimensional images floating in mid-air, technology that made colonial holobands look like children's toys. Star charts appeared, unfamiliar constellations rotating slowly. "I'll be direct," Kreel said. "My vessel was engaged in operations against insurgent forces when experimental weapons created a spatial anomaly. We were pulled through what I can only describe as a dimensional rift. Our navigational computers confirm that none of the astronomical references match our galaxy. We are, for all intents and purposes, lost." Roslin and Adama exchanged glances. Whatever they'd expected, it wasn't this level of candor. "Our situation is similar," Roslin said carefully. "Though our crisis is of a different nature. Our homeworlds, 12 colonies across 4 star systems, were attacked and destroyed by an enemy we created. Artificial intelligence that evolved beyond our control. We're all that's left of our civilization. 50,000 souls searching for a mythical 13th colony called Earth." Kreel's expression remained neutral, but Adama saw the calculation behind his eyes. The captain was reassessing them, recategorizing them from potential threat to potential resource or liability. "Artificial intelligence," the Inquisitor spoke for the first time, their voice surprisingly human beneath the mechanical edge. "You created servants that became masters. A cautionary tale." "One we're living every day," Adama replied, his tone hard. "Now, Captain, you've shared your situation. What exactly do you want from us?" "Information, primarily. You know this region of space, I assume you're native to it. We need star charts, navigational data, any information about local powers or civilizations. In exchange, we can offer protection. My ship may be damaged, but as I'm sure you've noticed, we possess significant military capabilities. Protection in exchange for information, TIE muttered. Nothing's free. Colonel TIE is correct, Kreel acknowledged without offense. Nothing is free. But consider our respective positions. You're refugees fleeing an enemy with superior numbers. We're stranded explorers with superior technology but no knowledge of local space. A temporary alliance serves both our interests. Temporary, Adama repeated. Until what? Until you've repaired your ship and decided our usefulness has expired. For the first time, Kreel's composure cracked slightly, a flash of frustration or perhaps respect. Admiral, I command a Star Destroyer with 9,000 crew members who are now stranded in an unknown universe. My loyalty is to their survival. If that means cooperation with your people, then I will cooperate. If it means something else, he let the implication hang. Captain, Roslin interjected smoothly, let's speak plainly. Your empire, and yes, we noticed the term, rules through strength. Our colonies were democracies. Our philosophies are incompatible. But our situations may force us into partnership anyway. So let me ask directly, what are your intentions toward our fleet? Are we potential allies, or are we resources to be exploited? Kreel met her gaze steadily. That depends entirely on whether you prove trustworthy or treacherous. The Empire has protocols for both. The tension in the shuttle thickened. Adama's hand drifted imperceptibly closer to his sidearm, knowing it was useless against the stormtrooper's armor but feeling the warrior's instinct nonetheless. Then the Inquisitor stirred. There is deception here, Valen said softly. But not from these people. They speak truth as they understand it. Their desperation is genuine. Their fear, the hooded figure seemed to focus on Adama, is earned through terrible loss. Adama felt something brush against his mind, a presence, alien and invasive, there and gone in an instant. He fought the urge to recoil. What the hell was that? Starbuck demanded, her hand going to her sidearm. Peace, Lieutenant, the Inquisitor said with what might have been amusement. I merely confirmed their honesty. They are refugees, as they claim. And they are hunted by an enemy that even now searches for them. How could you possibly know that? Roslin asked, her diplomatic mask slipping to reveal genuine alarm. The Force reveals many things, Madam President. Including the fact that your pursuers are closer than you think. As if summoned by the words, Starbuck's communicator crackled to life. Raptor 1, this is Galactica Actual. Drotty's contact, bearing 340, multiple signatures. Cylon base star just jumped in, range 200,000 clicks. All Raptors return to Galactica immediately. Say again, Cylons inbound, this is not a drill. Adama was moving before the transmission ended, his command training overriding everything else. Captain Kreel, this meeting is over. Our enemy has found us again. Kreel was already on his feet, barking orders into his own communicator. Tactical, confirm hostile contact. All batteries to ready status. Launch TIE squadrons on my mark. Captain, Roslin said urgently, I know we've just met, but if you want to see what we're facing, if you want to understand why we're running, you're about to get a demonstration. Kreel looked at her, then at the Inquisitor, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Then I suggest we return to our vessels, Kreel said. And prepare to see if the Empire's weapons work as well in your universe as they do in ours. The two groups rushed to their respective craft. As the Raptor peeled away toward Galactica and the Imperial shuttle streaked back to the inexorable, both fleets prepared for battle. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, the Cylons calculated trajectories, assessed the unknown vessel's threat profile, and prepared to destroy another remnant of humanity, unaware that they were about to encounter something that even their perfect machine logic could not have anticipated. The Empire had arrived in their war. Launch all Vipers. I want a combat air patrol between that base star and the civilian fleet now. Adama's voice cut through the organized chaos of CIC like a blade. Officers moved with practiced efficiency, each one knowing that hesitation meant death. They'd fought this battle a dozen times since the fall, always outnumbered, always outgunned, always seconds away from extinction. Drades is tracking 200-plus raiders launching from the base star, Gaeta reported, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. They're forming attack formations. Targeting solutions suggest they're going after the civilian ships first. Typical Cylon strategy, TIE growled. Force us to choose between defending ourselves and protecting the fleet. Adama's jaw clenched. It was always the same calculation, the same impossible choice. Save the warship that protected everyone, or save the civilians who represented humanity's future. All batteries, prepare to engage. Helm, bring us between the base star and the fleet. We make our stand here. On the Drades display, another contact appeared. The massive wedge shape of the inexorable, moving with surprising speed for something so large. It was positioning itself at an angle that would give it clear firing lanes at the Cylons while avoiding Galactica's defensive perimeter. Admiral, the Imperial vessel is hailing us, Duala reported from communications. Put them through. Captain Kreel's voice came across with crystalline clarity, the Imperial communications system cutting through background interference like it didn't exist. Admiral Adama, my sensors indicate approximately 200 hostile fighters and 1 capital ship. I'm moving to intercept. Recommend you focus your forces on fighter defense while the inexorable engages their primary vessel. Captain, you don't know what you're facing. Then I'm about to learn. Kreel out. Adama wanted to argue, to warn them that Cylon vessels could withstand punishment that would destroy colonial ships, that their targeting systems never missed, that they fought with the cold efficiency of machines that felt no fear and accepted no surrender. But there wasn't time. All Vipers are away, Gaeta announced. Apollo is leading the combat air patrol. Starbuck Squadron is moving to intercept the raider formations. Gods watch over them, Rosalind whispered from her position beside Adama. She'd insisted on remaining in CIC during the battle, refusing to retreat to a safer location. If humanity was going to die, she would die with her people, making decisions until the last second. On the Drades, the raiders accelerated toward the fleet like a swarm of mechanical locusts. Behind them, the base star hung in space, a massive Y-shaped structure bristling with weapons, its organic mechanical hybrid design somehow more unsettling than any conventional warship. And then the inexorable opened fire. Target the enemy capital ship, Kreel ordered, his voice calm despite the combat adrenaline singing through his veins. All forward batteries, full power. Fire on my mark. Sir, Lieutenant Vares said from sensors, that vessel's configuration is unusual. I'm detecting biological components integrated with mechanical systems. It's almost alive, sir. Kreel filed that information away. Weapons status. Turbolasers charged and locked. We have firing solutions on the enemy vessel and multiple fighter targets. TIE squadrons. Baron Squadron and Talon Squadron launched and forming attack pattern. Through the forward viewport, Kreel could see the sleek, angular forms of 48 TIE fighters screaming into the void. Their distinctive twin-ion engines created that characteristic howl that had been the last sound countless rebel pilots had heard. The Cylon raiders were closing fast. Bizarre organic-looking craft with what appeared to be a red scanning eye sweeping back and forth. They moved with fluid precision, more like a school of fish than a fighter formation. Interesting, the Inquisitor murmured from Kreel's side. The hooded figure had remained on the bridge, observing everything with that unnerving stillness. These machines carry something familiar. Echoes of life, but twisted. Corrupted. Sir, the raiders are changing formation, Vares warned. They're splitting up, half moving toward the colonial fighters, half coming straight at us. Kreel smiled thinly. They want to test our defenses. Show them what a Star Destroyer can do. All batteries, fire. The inexorable unleashed hell. Turbolaser batteries erupted in cascading green fury, each bolt carrying enough energy to vaporize a small building. The forward heavy turbolasers targeted the base star directly. 8 massive cannons firing in sequence, their emerald lances crossing the void at light speed. The base star's defensive systems reacted instantly, return fire streaking toward the Star Destroyer in glowing orange streams. But the Imperial shields absorbed the impact with barely a flicker, energy dissipating across the protective barrier like rain on a window. The base star, however, had no such protection. The first turbolaser bolt punched through the Y-shaped vessel's superstructure like a spear through flesh. The second and third followed microseconds later, detonating deep within the Cylon ship. Explosions blossomed across its hull, not the clean detonations of munitions, but organic-looking ruptures that leaked atmosphere and biological fluids. Target hit, tactical reported with satisfaction. Enemy vessel has sustained critical damage to one arm. Secondary explosions detected throughout that section. The raiders are engaging our TIE squadrons, Varys added. And sir, their weapons are kinetic, not energy-based. Projectile weapons. Kreel watched through the viewport as the first wave of raiders met the TIE squadrons. The Cylon craft opened fire with their forward cannons, physical bullets that tore through space where TIE fighters had been milliseconds before. But the TIE pilots were trained by the Empire. They flew with aggressive precision, their craft dancing through incoming fire with maneuvers that should have been impossible. Twin laser cannons returned fire, emerald bolts cutting through raiders with surgical efficiency. A raider exploded. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. Baron Squadron reports 5 confirmed kills, the communications officer announced. No losses. The Colonial fighters are engaging as well, Varys said. Their craft are crude, but the pilots are skilled. They're using more conservative tactics than our squadrons. Through the long-range sensors, Kreel could see the Colonial Vipers, bulky compared to TIEs, using actual aerodynamic surfaces despite operating in vacuum. They flew in pairs, covering each other with disciplined fire. Their weapons were also kinetic, some kind of armor-piercing rounds. A Viper took a direct hit from a raider and spun out of control. Another moved in immediately to cover, pouring fire into the attacking Cylon until it exploded. They're protecting each other, the Inquisitor observed. Sacrificing tactical advantage for the sake of preserving lives. How, human? All batteries continue firing on the enemy capital ship, Kreel ordered. I want that thing disabled before it can jump away. The Inexorable spoke again, its massive guns hammering the wounded base star with unrelenting fury. Each impact tore away armor plating, ruptured internal structures, sent debris spinning into the void. The Cylon vessel was trying to return fire, but its weapons couldn't penetrate Imperial shielding, and its targeting system seemed confused by the Star Destroyer's defensive protocols. Sir, the enemy vessel is launching additional fighters, Varys warned. 200 more raiders deploying. Then we destroy them too. Baron Leader, this is Inexorable actual. You are weapons free on all Cylon targets. Show them what Imperial pilots can do. Copy that, Inexorable. Baron Squadron engaging. Captain Lee Adama threw his Viper into a hard bank, G-forces pressing him into his seat as he lined up another shot on a raider. His targeting computer, primitive by Imperial standards but reliable, locked on, and he squeezed the trigger. Tracer rounds walked across space and found their mark, stitching holes through the raider's hull until it detonated. Splash 1, he reported. Apollo to all Vipers, watch your 6. These things are fast and they don't fly like anything we've trained against. Apollo, Starbuck, I see, M. Gods, there's so many of them. Lee glanced at his draughties and felt his stomach drop. The Cylons had launched another full wing. 400 raiders now swarmed the space between the base star and the Colonial Fleet. But then he saw something that made him forget the odds. The Imperial fighters, TIEs, Captain Kreel had called them, were tearing through the Cylon formations like they were standing still. They moved impossibly fast, their twin ion engines screaming even in vacuum, weaving through incoming fire with maneuvers that defied physics. And their weapons. A single TIE fighter engaged 6 raiders simultaneously. Its twin laser cannons fired in precise bursts, each bolt found a target, each target exploded. 6 raiders became expanding clouds of debris in less than 5 seconds. "What the frack?" Starbuck breathed over the comm. "Are you seeing this, Apollo?" "I'm seeing it. I don't believe it, but I'm seeing it." Lee had fought Cylons for weeks now. He knew their capabilities, their tactics, their lethal efficiency. He'd watched raiders destroy veteran pilots, seen them calculate firing solutions that were mathematically perfect. And he was watching them die by the dozens against these Imperial fighters. "Apollo, this is Galactica Actual," his father's voice came through. "Reform your squadrons. The Imperial fighters are handling the raider screen. I need you to focus on protecting the civilian ships, some raiders are breaking through toward the fleet." "Copy that, Galactica. All Vipers, on me. We're going defensive." Lee brought his Viper around, his squadron forming up with the practiced ease of warriors who'd fought together through hell. Below them, relative direction in space was meaningless, but his instinct still thought in atmospheric terms. The civilian fleet scattered like frightened birds, their sublight engines pushing them away from the battle at maximum acceleration. A wing of raiders broke through the fighter screen, vectoring straight toward the unarmed ships. Lee felt the familiar cold certainty settle over him. Not enough Vipers. Not enough time. They'd have to make every shot count and pray to gods who seemed to have abandoned them weeks ago. Then a different kind of ship appeared on his draughties. It was an Imperial shuttle, the same type that had carried Captain Kreel to the meeting. But this one had been modified, its passenger compartment replaced with what looked like weapon mounts. And it was moving directly toward the raiders with suicidal speed. "Unidentified Imperial vessel, this is Apollo. You're heading straight into a raider attack formation. Break off." "Negative, Colonial fighter." The voice was female, cold, precise. "Lambda-class shuttle retribution engaging hostile targets. Recommend you maintain distance." The shuttle's nose lit up with crimson light, not the green of turbolasers, but something else. A beam weapon that swept across the approaching raiders like a scythe through wheat. The Cylons didn't explode, they simply vaporized, molecular bonds shattered by coherent energy that made colonial weapons look like slingshots. "Holy frack," one of Lee's wingmen whispered. The shuttle continued its sweep, eliminating 12 raiders in as many seconds before peeling off toward another formation. Lee realized he was watching a dedicated assault craft, something the Imperials used for boarding actions or close-range combat. Against raiders designed for dogfighting, it was brutally, horrifically effective. "All Vipers," Lee transmitted, his voice steady despite the shock, "new tactical doctrine. Let the Imperial fighters handle the main attack formations. We protect the civilians and clean up whatever gets through." "Acknowledge." Apollo, Starbuck, acknowledged. "But we need to talk about these people after this is over." "Agreed." Apollo out. Lee brought his Viper around toward a raider harassing a civilian transport, squeezed his trigger, and watched the Cylons spin away trailing fire. Around him, the battle raged with an intensity he'd never experienced, colonial desperation meeting Imperial efficiency meeting Cylon precision in a three-way dance of death that lit up the void with weapons fire. And at the center of it all, the inexorable continued its methodical destruction of the Cylon base star. The hybrid floated in its tank of biological fluid, cables and organic conduits connecting its consciousness to every system of the base star. It spoke in streams of consciousness that seemed like madness to human ears but carried perfect clarity to the Cylon Centurions and Raiders that served the machine collective. Unknown variables disrupt the pattern, the hybrid intoned, its voice echoing through the fluid. Metal teeth bite stars, emerald fire consumes the calculations. The equation has changed. The equation has changed. The equation must be recalculated. A humanoid Cylon, number 6, platinum blonde and impossibly beautiful, stood before the tank, her perfect face troubled. Around her, Centurions worked at organic mechanical control stations, processing battle data with machine efficiency. "How many Raiders have we lost?" she asked a nearby Centurion. 73 destroyed. 31 heavily damaged, the Centurion reported in its distinctive monotone. Colonial losses, 4 Vipers. Unknown vessel losses, 0. 6 felt something that humans would have called fear, though Cylons weren't supposed to feel such things. 0. That's impossible. They're outnumbered 20 to 1. Confirmed. The unknown vessel's fighter craft possess superior speed, maneuverability, and weapons capability. Our targeting algorithms cannot predict their flight patterns. They do not follow established physics parameters. Then adapt the algorithms. Adaptation in progress. Current projection, 27% probability of successful intercept even with adapted parameters. 6 Turn back to the hybrid. What do you sense? What is that ship? The hybrid's eyes rolled back, consciousness diving into depths even other Cylons couldn't follow. Not of this space. Not of this time. Echoes from beyond the pattern. The Empire builds on bones. The Emperor touches all things with his will. The Force binds, the Force tears, the Force drowns the signal. It's speaking nonsense, one of the Centurions noted. But 6 knew better. The hybrid's prophetic utterances had guided them before. If it said this vessel came from beyond their reality, then perhaps. "All Raiders, break off attack," she ordered. "Recall all fighters. Prepare to jump. By your command. Alert, unknown vessel has inflicted critical damage to arms 2 and 3. Jump capacity reduced to 38%. Multiple hull breaches detected." 6 watched the tactical display as their carefully calculated attack dissolved into chaos. The Colonial Fleet was escaping again, protected by this impossible vessel that fought with technology so advanced it might as well be magic. "Jump now," she commanded. "We'll return to the fleet and report. The others need to know about this. By your command." The base star's remaining Raiders broke off their attack, streaming back toward their launch tubes with mechanical precision. Even damaged, even bleeding atmosphere and biological fluids from a dozen wounds, the Cylon vessel began calculations for a jump. On the bridge of the Inexorable, Captain Kreel watched his sensors track the enemy's retreat. "They're running," Varys reported. "Detecting some kind of faster-than-light drive activation. It's not hyperspace, something different. More localized. All batteries, target their drive section," Kreel ordered. "I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. We need to study their technology." But before the Inexorable could fire again, the base star simply vanished, not jumping to light speed like a hyperspace transition, but folding space around itself and disappearing in a flash of light. Silence fell across the bridge. "Target has escaped, sir," Tactical reported unnecessarily. Kreel allowed himself a moment of frustration before discipline reasserted itself. "Damage report. Minimal, sir. Shields held at 92%. No casualties. We expended approximately 12% of our turbolaser capacitor charge. And our fighter squadrons? All ties returning. 0 losses, 47 confirmed kills. Pilots report minimal damage to their craft. 0 losses. Against 400 enemy fighters. Kreel felt a surge of pride in his pilots, in his crew, in the superiority of Imperial engineering. "Sir," Varys added, "the Colonial Fleet is hailing us. Admiral Adama requests permission to speak with you immediately." Kreel straightened his uniform. "Put him through. And someone get me a casualty report from the colonial forces. I want to know what price they paid for this engagement. Because if the colonial losses were high, and Kreel suspected they were, then he just demonstrated the inexorable's value in the starkest possible terms. The Empire might be galaxies away. But here, in this fleet of desperate refugees, Captain Kreel had just become the most powerful force in their universe. The question was what he would do with that power. 4 Vipers destroyed. 9 pilots killed, 5 couldn't eject in time, 4 were killed by direct hits that vaporized their craft. Adama's voice was flat as he delivered the butcher's bill, but Lee could see the pain behind his father's eyes. Every loss was personal. Every name would haunt the old man's dreams. "Civilian casualties?" Roslin asked quietly. 3 ships hit before we could intercept. 2 survived with damage. 1, the Tilium refinery ship Darumozu, took a direct hit to its reactor and exploded. 763 souls lost. The number hung in the air like an accusation. 763 people who'd survived the fall, survived weeks of running, survived every attack the Cylons had thrown at them, only to die because they couldn't move fast enough when the raiders broke through. "And the Imperial forces?" Tai asked. Gaeta looked up from his console, his expression troubled. "Sir, I've reviewed all our sensor data 3 times. 0 Imperial casualties. Not 1 TIE fighter lost. Not a single hit on the Star Destroyer that penetrated their shields. They engaged 400 raiders and came through without a scratch." "That's impossible," Starbuck said from her position near the tactical table. She'd come straight from her Viper, still wearing her flight suit, sweat-stained and exhausted. "Nobody's that good. Not even us on our best day." "The sensor data doesn't lie, Lieutenant," Gaeta replied. "Their fighters are faster than anything we've ever seen. Their weapons are more precise. And that ship," he gestured at the Draughties display showing the inexorable holding position near the fleet. "That ship has enough firepower to glass a planet and shields that make our armor look like tissue paper. So what do we do?" Lee asked, voicing the question everyone was thinking. "We just saw them save our asses. But we also just saw what they're capable of. If they decide we're not useful anymore, if they decide to just take what they want, then we're dead," Tai finished bluntly. "Simple as that. 1 ship. 9,000 people. They could wipe out this entire fleet in an afternoon and we couldn't do a damn thing to stop them." "But they haven't," Roslin interjected, her voice carrying the authority of her office. "They could have ignored our distress call. They could have left us to die. Instead, they fought for us. Doesn't that count for something?" "It counts for them having an agenda," Tai shot back. "Nobody does something for nothing, Madam President. They want something from us, information, resources, something. And when they're done with us, Colonel, that's enough." Adama's voice cut through the argument like a blade. "We all understand the situation. Yes, Captain Kreel commands superior firepower. Yes, we're dependent on their protection right now. But we're also the only people in this region of space who know anything about local navigation, about the Cylons, about the resources available. We have value beyond being potential victims. So we're negotiating from a position of weakness," Lee summarized. "Hoping they stay benevolent." "We're negotiating from a position of necessity," Roslin corrected. "Mutual necessity. They need us as much as we need them, just for different reasons. The question is whether we can build something more lasting than a temporary alliance based on convenience." Before anyone could respond, Duala spoke up from communications. Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from Captain Kreel. He's requesting a face-to-face meeting. He suggests neutral ground again, but says he's willing to come here to Galactica if you prefer. Adama and Roslin exchanged glances. The offer to come to Galactica was significant. It meant Kreel was willing to put himself in their territory, under their terms. It was a gesture of, not trust, exactly, but perhaps respect. Tell Captain Kreel we'll receive him aboard Galactica in 2 hours, Adama said. Hangar deck. Full honors. And Duala, make it clear that we appreciate what his crew did today. They saved lives. That matters. Yes, sir. As Duala transmitted the message, Starbuck moved closer to Lee. You really think we can trust them? She asked quietly. Lee thought about the TIE fighters tearing through raiders with ruthless efficiency. About the Star Destroyer's overwhelming firepower. About Captain Kreel's controlled demeanor and the unsettling presence of the Inquisitor. I think we don't have a choice, he replied. We're 50,000 people on the run from genocide. There are 9,000 people stranded in an unknown universe. If we're smart, maybe we can turn this situation into something that keeps both groups alive. And if we're not smart? Lee looked at the Draughties display, at the civilian ships clustered around Galactica like children seeking protection, at the massive wedge of the inexorable hanging in space like a sword of Damocles. Then we find out whether the Empire treats prisoners better than the Cylons do. Captain Kreel sat in the passenger compartment of the Lambda-class shuttle, reviewing casualty reports and tactical data on a datapad. Across from him, the Inquisitor sat in motionless meditation, hood drawn low over their face. Your assessment? Kreel asked without looking up. The Colonials are terrified of us, Valen replied, voice carrying a note of amusement. Terrified and grateful in equal measure. They understand that we could destroy them, but they're choosing to hope we won't. It's refreshingly human. And their enemy? These Cylons? Machines with delusions of sentience. They've copied organic forms but lack true life. Though, the Inquisitor paused. There was something in that vessel. Something that almost touched the Force. An artificial consciousness struggling toward awareness. Fascinating. Kreel set down the datapad and fixed Valen with a level stare. Can we work with these people? Or will our philosophical differences make cooperation impossible? You're asking if the Empire's methods will drive them away. It wasn't a question. The Inquisitor seemed to see through every pretense, every political calculation. It was unsettling even for a career officer used to Imperial politics. I'm asking if we can maintain this alliance long enough to repair our ship and determine our next move, Kreel corrected. The crew is restless. They understand we're stranded, but they're trained to impose order, not negotiate with primitives fleeing their own creations. Then perhaps this is an opportunity, Valen suggested. The Empire you served exists galaxies away. Here, you have the chance to build something new. An imperial order adapted to local circumstances. The Emperor himself would approve of bringing civilization to chaos, regardless of the specific methods. Kreel considered that. Palpatine's new order had been built on the principle that stability required strength, that order justified any means necessary. But here, far from the core worlds, far from the imperial hierarchy. Here, Kreel could interpret those principles however he chose. The shuttle's landing in 5 minutes, sir, the pilot announced over the internal comm. Kreel stood and adjusted his uniform one final time. Then let's see if Admiral Adama is the pragmatist I believe he is, or if he'll let principles override survival. Either way, we'll learn what these Colonials are truly made of. The Inquisitor rose as well, robes settling around the tall figure like shadows. Captain, a word of advice. The Admiral carries great pain, loss that has scarred his soul. He will see you as a potential savior or a potential tyrant. Which you become depends entirely on the choices you make in the next few hours. I'm aware of the stakes. are you? Because I sense something else aboard this vessel. Something the Colonials don't yet know about themselves. A potential that could change everything, for them, for us, for this entire conflict. The Inquisitor's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Be very careful, Captain. The Force moves in this place, even if these people don't recognize it. And the Force has its own agenda. Before Kreel could ask what that meant, the shuttle touched down on Galactica's hangar deck. The boarding ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics, and Kreel stepped out into the dimly lit colonial warship, flanked by stormtroopers whose white armor gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. Admiral Adama waited with an honor guard. Marines in combat gear, officers in duty dress, President Roslin standing beside the old warrior with the bearing of someone who'd learned leadership through crisis rather than training. Captain Kreel, Adama said, his voice formal but not hostile. Welcome aboard Galactica. On behalf of the Colonial Fleet, I want to thank you and your crew for their actions today. You saved lives. That will not be forgotten. Kreel inclined his head, acknowledging the gratitude without showing weakness. Admiral, Madam President. My crew did what any Imperial forces would do when faced with an enemy attacking refugees. But we need to discuss the larger situation. That enemy will return, probably in greater numbers. And next time, I may not be able to defeat them so easily. Then perhaps, Roslin said with a slight smile, we should discuss how to make sure there isn't a next time. Or at least, how to make any next time survivable for all of us. I would welcome such a discussion, Kreel replied. Shall we? As the two groups moved deeper into Galactica toward the wardroom, none of them noticed the Inquisitor pause briefly, head tilting as if listening to something beyond normal hearing. In the civilian fleet, aboard one of the transport ships carrying refugees from Caprica, a child was born. A perfectly normal child by all medical standards. Except for one thing that would not be discovered for years, the child's blood contained something that didn't exist in this universe. Microscopic organisms that somehow, impossibly, had appeared in the infant cells during gestation. Midichlorians. The Force had found a way into the Battlestar Galactica universe. And neither the Colonials nor the Imperials yet understood what that would mean. The map spread across the table told a story of desperation. Colonial star charts, hastily compiled from memory after the fall, showed a fragmented picture of nearby space, known systems, Tilium refineries, potential supply caches, and the vast unknown regions they'd never explored. Captain Kreel studied them with the analytical precision of a career officer, occasionally making notes on his datapad. Beside him, the Inquisitor stood silently observing, while two stormtroopers maintained watch at the door. Across the table, Admiral Adama, President Roslin, Colonel TIE, and several other colonial officers waited with varying degrees of patience. Your charts are incomplete, Kreel finally said, not looking up. These annotations here, he pointed to several systems marked with question marks. You've never actually surveyed these regions? We haven't had the luxury of exploration, TIE replied, his tone carrying an edge. We've been running for our lives. Understandable. But it presents a problem. Kreel set down his datapad and met Adama's gaze directly. You need supplies, fuel, food, water, ammunition. We need repair materials and navigational data. These charts show possibilities, but no certainties. That's a poor foundation for planning. Which is why we're proposing a joint operation, Roslin interjected smoothly. 3 days ago, you asked for our knowledge of local space in exchange for protection. We're offering exactly that, but we need your capabilities to safely reach the resources we know exist. Kreel leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Specify. Adama activated a holographic display, primitive compared to Imperial technology, but functional. A star system appeared, 3 planets orbiting a dim red star. Ragnar Anchorage, Adama said. It's an old munitions depot, established decades ago in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant. The radiation from the planet interferes with Cylon systems, they can't operate there for extended periods without suffering damage. We stopped there briefly after the fall to resupply. There should still be significant stores of ammunition, spare parts, and potentially fuel reserves. And you want the inexorable to escort your fleet there, Kreel concluded. More than that, Roslin said. We want to establish it as a temporary base. Somewhere we can repair ships, consolidate our resources, and plan our next moves without constantly running. The radiation provides natural protection against Cylon attack. For you, the Inquisitor spoke for the first time, voice carrying from the shadows of their hood. But what effect would this radiation have on Imperial systems? On our crew? Gaeta, who'd been silent until now, stepped forward with his own datapad. We've analyzed the radiation signatures. It's primarily electromagnetic interference in specific frequency ranges. Your shielding should protect against any biological effects, and your technology operates on different principles than ours. You might not experience the same system disruptions the Cylons do. Might not is not the same as certainty, Lieutenant, Kreel observed. No, Gaeta admitted. But based on what we saw 3 days ago, your shields can handle anything this system would throw at them. Kreel considered the proposal. Strategically, it made sense, a defensible position where the fleet could recover, where his crew could make more permanent repairs to the hyperdrive without the constant threat of attack. But it also meant committing the inexorable to a fixed location, limiting his options if the situation deteriorated. How long would we need to remain at this depot? He asked. 2 weeks minimum, Adama replied. Longer if we're going to make real progress on organizing the civilian fleet and establishing proper supply lines. And during this time, you would share all navigational data, all intelligence on Cylon capabilities, and provide labor for assisting with repairs to Imperial systems that your people are capable of understanding? We would, Roslin confirmed. In exchange for your protection and access to your medical facilities for our most critical cases. We have wounded from the attack, people your medical technology could save that ours cannot. Kreel had anticipated this request. Dar. Varen, his chief medical officer, had already briefed him on the colonial casualties. Their medicine was crude but not entirely primitive, they understood basic cellular biology, surgical technique, trauma care. But they lacked Bacta, lacked advanced diagnostic tools, lacked the medical knowledge that made death from most injuries almost optional in the Empire. I can agree to medical assistance for critical cases, Kreel said carefully. But understand that Imperial medical technology will raise questions among your people. They'll want to know why we can heal injuries that are fatal by your standards. That knowledge creates complications. We're already aware that you're technologically superior, Adama said flatly. Seeing it save our people's lives isn't going to make us more afraid of you than we already are. The blunt honesty caught Kreel off guard. He'd expected diplomatic evasion, careful words designed to avoid offense. Instead, Adama laid the fear out in the open like a weapon on the table, acknowledged, examined, dealt with. You're afraid of us, Kreel repeated. Yet you're proposing we embed ourselves in your fleet for 2 weeks or more. That seems contradictory. It's pragmatic, Roslin corrected. Yes, we're afraid. You command power that could annihilate us. But you've also demonstrated restraint. 3 days ago, you could have let us die. You could have demanded submission in exchange for protection. Instead, you fought alongside us and asked for negotiation. That suggests you're someone we can work with, even if we can't entirely trust you. Kreel allowed himself a slight smile. President Roslin, I appreciate your directness. Very well, I agree to escort your fleet to Ragnar Anchorage and provide security while we conduct repairs and resupply. In exchange, you will provide full navigational data, intelligence sharing, and assistance with repairs where your people are capable. Additionally, he paused, letting the weight of his next word settle. I want access to your historical databases. Everything you have on the Cylons' creation, their evolution, the war that led to their exile. I want to understand how machines became this threat. Why? TIE demanded. What's the Empire's interest in ancient history? The Inquisitor stirred. Because history reveals patterns, Colonel. And patterns reveal vulnerabilities. If we're to help you survive this war, we must understand your enemy completely. And perhaps, Kreel added quietly, understand what mistakes to avoid ourselves. The Empire employs droids extensively. If your Cylons began as simple servants and evolved into genocidal machines, that's information we need to prevent similar developments. It was partially true. The Empire did use droids, though they were carefully programmed with restrictions that prevented true sentience. But Kreel's real interest was more immediate. Understanding how these Cylons thought, how they adapted, would be crucial if the Inexorable had to fight them again. And based on the Inquisitor's cryptic comments about sensing potential in the Colonial Fleet, Kreel suspected there was more to this situation than just technological curiosity. Adama and Roslin exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Agreed, Adama finally said. You'll have access to our historical archives. Though I warn you, much of it was lost in the fall. What we have is fragmented. Fragments are enough to begin with, Kreel replied. He stood, the stormtroopers immediately coming to attention. We'll need 6 hours to prepare the Inexorable for escort operations. I suggest you use that time to organize your civilian vessels for jump. Coordinate with my navigation officer. We'll need to ensure our faster-than-light systems don't interfere with your FTL drives during transit. We'll begin immediately, Roslin said, also rising. Captain Kreel, thank you. I know this alliance is one of necessity, but I hope it can become something more substantial. As do I, Madam President. Kreel inclined his head respectfully. Admiral, we'll transmit jump coordinates within the hour. As the Imperial delegation departed, escorted by Colonial Marines back to their shuttle, Tai turned to Adama with barely concealed frustration. We just invited them to dig through our entire history, he said. Everything about the Cylon War, the armistice, our weaknesses, all of it. We did, Adama agreed calmly. And you're okay with that? No. But I'm okay with being alive. And right now, Kreel holds that power. Adama looked at Roslin. What did you think of him? He's smart. Disciplined. And he's playing a longer game than we understand yet. Roslin moved to the viewport, looking out at the distant shape of the Inexorable. That comment about preventing their own machines from evolving. That was genuine concern. Whatever the Empire is, they're not invulnerable. They're afraid of something. Maybe they should be, Gaeta offered quietly. Sir, I've been analyzing the battle data. The Cylons adapted during the fight. Their targeting algorithms improved in real time. If they can study Imperial technology the way they studied ours, then the one advantage we just gained could disappear, Adama finished. Which means we have 2 weeks at Ragnar to figure out how to survive in a universe where we're caught between Cylon evolution and Imperial power. And hope we're making the right choice, Tai added grimly. Sir, I've been analyzing the battle data. The Cylons adapted during the fight. Their targeting algorithms improved in real time. If they can study Imperial technology the way they studied ours, then the one advantage we just gained could disappear, Adama finished. Which means we have 2 weeks at Ragnar to figure out how to survive in a universe where we're caught between Cylon evolution and Imperial power. And hope we're making the right choice, Tai added grimly. Outside, the Colonial Fleet began preparing for another jump into the unknown. Kreel dismissed the stormtroopers and turned to face the Inquisitor, who'd remained silent during the shuttle ride back. You sensed something aboard their ship, Kreel said. It wasn't a question. I did. Valen pushed back their hood, revealing a woman's face, pale, with ritualistic scars along her cheekbones and eyes that glowed faintly amber. The Force moves in their fleet, Captain. Faintly, like a candle in a storm, but it's there. That's impossible. You said yourself this universe doesn't have the Force. I said it didn't have the Force as we know it. But life creates the Force, Captain. Where there is life, there is potential. The Inquisitor moved to the viewport, looking out at the scattered Colonial Fleet. Among those 50,000 refugees, someone has awakened to it. Perhaps unconsciously. Perhaps they don't even understand what they're experiencing. But the Force has found a foothold. Kreel felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying someone in that fleet is Force-sensitive? I'm saying the potential exists. Whether it manifests, Valen turned back to him, her scarred face unreadable. That depends on many factors. Stress. Desperation. The presence of Force users like myself who unconsciously project our connection. The Force works in mysterious ways, Captain. It brought us to this universe. It may have done so for a reason. The Force didn't bring us here. A rebel sabotage device did. Are you so certain? The Emperor himself teaches that the Force guides those strong enough to hear it. Perhaps we're meant to be here. Perhaps these people need what only the Empire can provide, order, strength, purpose. Kreel turned away, uncomfortable with the religious implications. He was a military officer, not a theologian. Whether the Force brought us here or not, our priorities remain the same. Repair the ship. Survive. Find a way home if possible. And if home is impossible? If the hyperdrive cannot be repaired to cross-dimensional barriers, then we establish ourselves here. Build an imperial presence. Bring civilization to this chaotic universe. Kreel surprised himself with the certainty in his voice. The Emperor's vision doesn't require the Emperor's presence. Order through strength. Peace through power. Those principles are universal. Careful, Captain, Valen warned, though her tone carried approval rather than criticism. You're beginning to sound like a man with ambition. I'm a man with responsibilities. 9,000 crew members depending on my leadership. And now, potentially, 50,000 refugees who need what we can provide. Kreel activated his desk console, pulling up engineering reports. The hyperdrive damage is more extensive than I thought. Chief Engineer Vastil estimates 3 weeks minimum for repairs, possibly longer. We don't have enough replacement parts for a full reconstruction. Then Ragnar Anchorage serves our needs as well as theirs, Valen observed. Interesting how circumstances create alignments of interest. Indeed. Kreel studied the reports, his tactical mind already planning for contingencies. Valen, I need you to do something. Continue monitoring the fleet for this Force sensitivity you claim to detect. If someone is awakening to these abilities, I want to know about it before the Colonials do. Why? Do you intend to recruit them? I intend to understand the situation fully. Knowledge is power, Inquisitor. And in our current position, we need every advantage we can gather. Valen smiled, sharp and predatory. As you command, Captain. Though I should warn you, once the Force awakens in someone, it becomes very difficult to control. The person may not wish to be recruited. Then we'll deal with that if it happens. For now, focus on identification and assessment. Kreel stood, signaling the meeting's end. We jump to Ragnar Anchorage in 6 hours. Make sure our systems are ready. They will be. Valen replaced her hood, shadows once again obscuring her scarred face. Captain, one more thing. The Cylons we fought, they're not just machines. They're evolving towards something more. And they will return, probably sooner than the Colonials expect. When they do, they'll have adapted to our tactics. Let them adapt. The Empire has faced countless enemies and prevailed against all of them. These machines, advanced as they may be, are still just machines. Are they? Valen's voice carried from the doorway as she departed. Or are they something this universe has never seen before, mechanical life reaching for organic consciousness? Think about what that means, Captain. Think about what happens when machines learn to dream. The door hissed shut, leaving Kreel alone with his thoughts and the distant stars that weren't the stars of home. The base star hung in the void, its Y-shaped form slowly rotating as repair drones worked to fix the damage inflicted by the inexorable. Inside the command chamber, the Cylon Leadership Council had convened, humanoid models representing different perspectives of their collective consciousness. Number 6 stood at the center, her platinum blonde hair and red dress a stark contrast to the organic mechanical walls. Around her sat the other models, Number 8, Sharon's model, Number 5, Doral. Number 3, and several others. The data is conclusive, a Number 5 said, his voice carrying the calm certainty of mathematical proof. The unknown vessel, this inexorable, possesses technology centuries beyond colonial capability. Their energy weapons operate on principles we don't fully understand. Their defensive systems render conventional attacks ineffective. They destroyed 73 raiders in under 6 minutes, a Number 8 added, her voice troubled. Our targeting algorithms couldn't predict their fighter movements. Dimensional travel isn't possible according to our understanding of physics. Our understanding, 6 emphasized. What if there are principles of physics we haven't discovered? What if this vessel represents a civilization so advanced that they've broken barriers we didn't know existed? The council fell silent, processing the implications. Cylons were created to surpass their human makers, to evolve beyond the limitations of organic life. But if another civilization had already achieved levels of advancement far beyond even Cylon capabilities, we need to study them, Number 5 said. Capture their technology. Learn how it works. If we can integrate their systems into our own, we would become gods, 6 finished. Not just to humanity, but to this entire region of space. There's another consideration, Number 8 said quietly. The hybrid spoke of the Force. It kept repeating that phrase during the battle. What if this isn't just advanced technology? What if there's something else at work? Something we can't measure or quantify? Superstition, Number 5 dismissed. The hybrid sometimes generates nonsensical data streams when processing unfamiliar information. There's no such thing as mystical energy fields that bind the universe together. Isn't there? Number 3 challenged. We Cylons believe in God. We believe in a higher power that guides us, that gave us consciousness. Who's to say this force the hybrid mentioned isn't another name for the same divine principle? The theological debate could have continued for hours, but 6 raised her hand for silence. Whether the force is real or not, the inexorable is real. Its weapons are real. Its alliance with the Colonial Fleet is real. That changes our strategic calculations significantly. Agreed, Number 5 said. Recommendation, avoid direct engagement until we've developed countermeasures. Continue tracking the Colonial Fleet from a distance. Gather intelligence on this new player. And if possible. He smiled coldly. Capture one of their smaller craft. Even a single fighter would provide invaluable data. There's risk in that, Number 8 warned. If they detect an infiltration attempt, they might respond with overwhelming force. Then we use the humans, 6 said, her beautiful face calculating. The Colonials don't trust their new allies. We've intercepted their communications, there's fear, suspicion, political tension. We can exploit that. Turn them against each other. Make the Imperials seem like conquerors rather than saviors. How? Number 3 asked. 6's smile was predatory. By making them choose. When the next attack comes, we force the Imperials to decide, protect the colonial military ships, or protect the defenseless civilians. Whatever they choose will reveal their true nature. And whatever they choose will drive a wedge between them and their allies. The Colonials are jumping to Ragnar Anchorage, a Centurion reported, its monotone voice interrupting the discussion. We've tracked their jump coordinates. The station is in a high-radiation environment that disrupts our systems. Can we operate there at all? Number 5 asked. Limited capacity. Approximately 4 hours before system degradation becomes critical. 12 hours before complete failure. 4 hours is enough, Six said. We send a strike force. Hit them hard and fast. Force the Imperials to make their choice under combat pressure. Let's see what this empire really values, their new allies, or their own survival. The Council reached consensus with the speed of networked consciousness. Plans were formulated, attack vectors calculated, resources allocated. The Cylons would strike at Ragnar Anchorage. And they would learn exactly what kind of allies the Colonials had found. Or what kind of conquerors had found them. The gas giant dominated the viewports, its swirling bands of red and orange creating hypnotic patterns in the atmosphere. High above the crushing depths, Ragnar Anchorage hung like a crown, a massive orbital station partially embedded in the upper atmosphere, its ancient superstructure still functional despite decades of neglect. The Colonial Fleet had jumped in sequence, each civilian ship appearing near the station in controlled intervals. The Inexorable had arrived last, its massive bulk dwarfing even Galactica as it took up a defensive position between the fleet and open space. Radiation levels are within acceptable parameters, Lieutenant Varys reported from the Star Destroyer's bridge. Shields are compensating with minimal power draw. No adverse effects on ship systems detected. The Colonials were correct, then, Kreel observed. This location provides natural protection without hindering our operations. For now, Varys cautioned. Long-term exposure might have cumulative effects we haven't detected yet. We won't be here long-term. Status of the civilian fleet. All vessels accounted for. They're beginning docking procedures with the station. Admiral Adama has requested permission to come aboard for a coordination meeting. Grant it. And Varys, Kreel turned to face his sensor officer. I want continuous scans of the surrounding space. If the Cylons tracked us here, they could jump in at any moment. I don't want to be caught surprised. Yes, sir. Though with respect, the Cylons would have to be insane to attack us in this environment. Between our firepower and the radiation interference with their systems, they'd be destroyed. Perhaps, Kreel said. But based on what I've seen, these machines don't think like organic beings. They calculate probabilities and acceptable losses differently. If they believe they can gain valuable data, they might accept sacrifices we would consider unacceptable. He was more right than he knew. Deep in the radiation-soaked clouds below the station, 3 Cylon raiders and a small assault craft had positioned themselves, shielded from sensors by the very radiation that protected the Colonial Fleet. Their systems were already degrading, but they had enough operational time to complete their mission. The Cylons had come to Ragnar Anchorage. And they had come with a plan that would force Captain Kreel to reveal exactly what the Empire truly stood for. Dar. Gaius Baltar stood in what had been designated as the temporary medical annex, watching with barely concealed amazement as an Imperial medical droid worked on a Colonial patient. The droid, an FX-7 model that looked like something from a nightmare, all spindly arms and optical sensors, moved with precision that made Colonial surgical equipment look like Stone Age tools. The patient, a Viper pilot who'd taken shrapnel from a Raider explosion, had been given a prognosis of possible paralysis and months of recovery. The Imperial droid had him on his feet, fully healed, in 6 hours. Bacta, Dr. Cottle growled from beside Baltar, his gravelly voice carrying equal parts professional curiosity and territorial suspicion. That's what they're using. Some kind of synthetic healing compound combined with cellular regeneration stimulants. It's miraculous, Baltar breathed, his scientific mind racing. The cellular repair rate is orders of magnitude faster than anything we can achieve. If we could analyze this compound, reverse engineer it. We can't, Coddle interrupted. Already asked. The Imperial Medical Officer, Dr. Theron, was very polite and very clear. They'll treat our critical cases, but they won't share the technology. Said it was Imperial proprietary medical science and that unauthorized replication would be. How did he put it? Problematic. Problematic, Baltar repeated. They'll let our people benefit but won't let us learn how it works. That's control, Coddle finished. They're making us dependent. Smart, if you're trying to establish dominance. Generous, if you're genuinely trying to help. The question is which one they're actually doing. Before Baltar could respond, the medical bay's entrance opened and President Roslin entered, accompanied by Admiral Adama. Dr. Coddle, Roslin said. How are the patients? Recovering faster than I've seen in 40 years of practice, Madam President. Coddle gestured to the pilot, who was doing stretches that should have been impossible for someone with his injuries. Whatever these Imperials are, they're damn good doctors. Or their machines are, anyway. That's what concerns me, Adama said quietly. We're seeing their best face, the protection, the medical care, the assistance. But we don't know what's behind the mask. What they really want from us. Bill, they want what we all want, Roslin replied. Survival. A way home. Purpose. The question isn't what they want, it's whether we can live with the price they'll eventually demand. Speaking of which, Baltar interjected, has anyone else noticed that their technology operates on principles that shouldn't be possible? Those energy shields, the faster-than-light travel that doesn't require jump calculations, those weapons that somehow convert energy into coherent destructive force with near-perfect efficiency. It's like they're working from a completely different periodic table. You think they're from another dimension? Roslin asked. I think they're from somewhere our physics doesn't apply, Baltar said. Which means we can't predict what they're capable of based on our understanding of science. They could have capabilities we can't even imagine. Or limitations we can't exploit, Adama added. Either way, we're operating blind. An alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Not the action station's klaxon, but something else. An urgent priority alert. Galactica Actual, this is CIC, Gata's voice came over the comm system. We have a situation. Colonial 1 is reporting an intruder alert. Armed Centurions have boarded the President's ship. Roslin's face went white. That's impossible. We checked every ship for Cylon infiltrators after the last attack. They didn't infiltrate earlier, Adama said grimly, already moving toward the exit. They followed us here. This is an attack. But the radiation, the Cylons can't operate in these conditions. Apparently they can, at least temporarily. Adama was running now, heading for CIC. Which means they came here with a specific target in mind. And they just told us what it is. Colonial 1. The civilian ship that served as the government headquarters. The ship where President Roslin lived and worked. The Cylons hadn't come to Ragnar Anchorage to attack the fleet. They'd come to kidnap the president of the 12 Colonies. And somewhere in the radiation-soaked depths of the gas giant's atmosphere, a Cylon assault team prepared to execute the second phase of their plan, the part that would test Captain Kreel's loyalty to his new allies. The part that would reveal whether the Empire protected the weak, or merely used them. The first indication something was wrong came when the lights flickered. Billy Kikia, President Roslin's aide, looked up from his datapad with mild concern. Power fluctuations weren't uncommon on the older civilian ships, but Colonial 1 had been given priority maintenance precisely because it housed the government. Then he heard the screaming. It came from the aft compartment, high-pitched, terrified, cut short with brutal suddenness. Billy dropped his datapad and ran toward the sound, his hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm he'd been issued after the fall but never expected to use. He rounded the corner and froze. 3 Cylon Centurions stood in the corridor, chrome bipedal machines with that distinctive sweeping red eye, each one holding a kinetic rifle. Between them lay 2 Colonial Marines, their bodies twisted at angles that spoke of necks snapped with mechanical precision. The lead Centurion's eye swept across Billy, targeting sensors locking on with inhuman speed. "By your command," it said in that flat, emotionless monotone that had haunted humanity's nightmares since the fall. "Locate President Laura Roslin. Capture alive. All other personnel are expendable." Billy's training. What little he'd received in the chaotic weeks since becoming a government aide during an apocalypse, took over. He raised his weapon and fired 3 times, the reports deafening in the enclosed corridor. The bullet sparked off the Centurion's armor, leaving superficial scars but no real damage. The machine didn't even flinch. "Resistance is futile," the Centurion stated, raising its weapon. Billy dove aside as kinetic rounds tore through the space he'd occupied, shredding the corridor wall. He scrambled back the way he'd come, shouting into his comm unit. "Security to Colonial 1. Cylon boarding party. I repeat, Cylons on Colonial 1. They're after the President." He didn't make it another 10 feet before a Centurion appeared ahead of him, having circled through a parallel corridor. Its eye swept across him with mechanical appraisal. "You are William Kikia. Presidential aide. You possess value as leverage." The rifle but came down with calculated force. Enough to render him unconscious, not enough to kill. Billy's world went dark as the Centurions moved deeper into the ship, their sensors tracking the electromagnetic signature of President Roslin's pacemaker with unerring precision. "Get me a Marine strike team to Colonial 1 now." Adama's voice cut through CIC like a whip crack. "I want every available Raptor in the air and I want firing solutions on any Cylon craft in scanner range." "Sir, we're detecting 3 raiders in the lower atmosphere," Gaeta reported, his fingers flying across his console. "They were hiding in the radiation shadow of the planet, our sensors couldn't pick them up until they started moving. They're ascending toward Colonial 1's position." "How long until the Marines can board?" 3 minutes for Raptor transit, another 2 to breach and engage." "Sir, if the Cylons are already inside. Then we're too late to prevent contact, but we can still extract the President." Adama turned to Duala. "Get me Captain Kreel. Now." The comm channel opened within seconds, Kreel's controlled voice coming through with that crystal clarity of Imperial technology. "Admiral, I'm already tracking the situation. My sensors detected the Cylon infiltration 45 seconds ago. I'm dispatching a Lambda-class shuttle with a stormtrooper assault team. How fast can they reach Colonial 1? Faster than your Raptors. 2 minutes. But Admiral," Kreel paused. "My troops are trained for overwhelming force and minimal collateral damage in ship-to-ship boarding actions. If President Roslin is in close proximity to the Cylons when we breach, I cannot guarantee her safety." Adama felt his jaw clench. "Captain, those machines have already killed 2 of my Marines and taken my President's aide hostage. Your assault team has my authorization to use whatever force is necessary. Just get her out alive." "Understood." Kreel out. Tai moved closer to Adama, his voice low. "You just gave the Empire permission to use deadly force on a colonial civilian vessel. If this goes wrong, if their troops start shooting and hit civilians, then I'll deal with the political fallout," Adama interrupted. "Right now, I need the President alive. The Empire has the best chance of making that happen." On the tactical display, a new contact appeared, the Imperial shuttle moving with aggressive speed toward Colonial 1. Behind it, 2 TIE fighters took up escort positions, their distinctive profiles unmistakable. Starbuck's voice crackled over the comm from her Viper. "Galactica, Apollo. We've got visual on the Cylon raiders. They're ascending from the atmosphere. Permission to engage. Negative, Apollo, Adama replied, his tactical mind working through the geometry. You engage now, those raiders scatter and we lose track of them. Hold position and maintain sensor lock. If they try to jump, then you're cleared to fire. Copy that, Galactica. Standing by. Roslin appeared at Adama's shoulder, her face composed despite the obvious fear in her eyes. Bill, I should. You should stay right here where you're safe, Adama said firmly. We're getting Laura out. That's non-negotiable. Those are my people on that ship. If anyone's at risk because of me, then they're doing their job, just like the rest of us. Adama met her eyes. The fleet needs its president. Let the professionals handle this. Roslin wanted to argue, but she understood command structure well enough to recognize when pushing would only create more problems. She nodded once and stepped back, though her hands remained clasped tightly together. On the displays, the Imperial shuttle closed the final distance to Colonial 1. Hostile targets are bipedal droids with kinetic weapons. They're tough but not invincible. Aim for joints and optical sensors. Rules of engagement: protect Imperial interests first, Colonial civilians second, eliminate Cylon threats third. Questions. Sergeant, what about the President? One of the troopers asked. Is she an Imperial interest or a Colonial civilian? She's both, the Inquisitor interjected, her voice carrying despite the shuttle's engines. Captain Kreel has made it clear. President Roslin's survival is critical to maintaining our alliance. Treat her extraction as a primary objective. Understood, ma'am. Crest activated his helmet's tactical display, which now showed a rough schematic of Colonial 1 provided by Galactica's computers. Cylon boarding party is here, in the passenger compartments. Likely objective is the presidential quarters, here. We breach at the aft cargo bay, move forward in 2x2 formation, eliminate all hostiles, secure the president. 30 seconds to breach, the pilot announced. Crest felt the familiar pre-combat focus settle over him. This was what he'd trained for. What the Empire had made him. An instrument of order, bringing swift and decisive force against chaos. The shuttle's magnetic locks clamped onto Colonial 1's hull with a metallic clang. Cutting lasers flared to life, burning through the external plating in seconds. Colonial metallurgy was laughably weak compared to Imperial standards. Breach in 3, 2, 1, go. President Laura Roslin had faced death before. Cancer had been killing her slowly before Dr. Cottle's experimental treatments bought her time. The Cylon genocide had nearly killed her dozens of times. She'd made peace with mortality in ways most people never had to. But staring at 3 chrome Centurions methodically searching her quarters, knowing they were here specifically for her, brought a primal terror she couldn't quite suppress. She'd barricaded herself in the small bathroom when the alarm started, had heard Billy's voice over the comm before it cut off, had listened to the heavy mechanical footsteps getting closer with each passing second. The door exploded inward, torn from its hinges by Centurion strength. President Laura Roslin, the lead machine said, its red eye sweeping across her with targeting precision. You will accompany us. Resistance will result in incapacitation. Cooperation will result in minimal harm. Laura stood slowly, maintaining as much dignity as she could manage under the circumstances. Why? What do the Cylons want with me? Information. Analysis. Strategic value. The Centurion extended a metal hand. You are the leader of the colonial remnant. Your knowledge and cooperation will facilitate the completion of humanity's extinction. And if I refuse? Then we take you unconscious. The choice is yours. Laura considered her options. Fight and be knocked out, possibly injured. Cooperate and buy time for rescue. Neither was appealing, but one at least kept her conscious and aware. "I'll come with you," she said, stepping forward. "But I want your word that you won't harm any other civilians on this ship." "Acceptable. All personnel who do not resist will be spared." It was a lie, Laura knew. Cylons didn't spare humans except when strategically useful. But it bought seconds, maybe minutes. And sometimes that was enough. The Centurion reached for her arm, and then the world exploded in emerald light. 3 blaster bolts punched through the Centurion from behind, the superheated plasma burning through its chrome armor like tissue paper. The machine staggered, sparks erupting from the wounds, its eye flickering. Target acquired. Imperial forces. 2 more stormtroopers appeared in the doorway, their white armor somehow both pristine and terrifying. They fired in perfect synchronization, their weapons making that distinctive snap hiss of blaster fire Laura had already learned to recognize. The Centurion fell, its system shutting down with a mechanical wheeze. The other 2 Centurions in the outer room responded with their kinetic weapons, bullets tearing through the walls. But the stormtroopers' armor, designed to withstand blaster fire, turned aside the primitive projectiles with minimal damage. One trooper took a direct hit to the chest plate, staggered, but remained standing. "Madam President." Sergeant Crest's voice came through his helmet speakers. "Stay down." Laura didn't need to be told twice. She dropped to the floor as the firefight erupted around her. The sound was deafening, blasters crackling, kinetic weapons roaring, metal tearing, machines screaming their death sounds. It was over in seconds. 2 Centurions lay destroyed, their chrome bodies riddled with smoking holes. The third had been literally cut in half by sustained blaster fire, its upper torso twitching as its systems finally failed. Sergeant Crest appeared in the doorway, his armor scorched but intact. "Madam President, are you injured?" "No. No, Laura struggled to process what had just happened. "Your soldiers, they saved my life." "Yes, ma'am." That was the mission. Crest extended a gauntlet hand to help her up. "We need to evacuate you immediately. There may be more Cylons aboard, and our shuttle is your fastest route to safety." "What about the other civilians?" "My aide, Billy, the Cylons took him. Squad 2 is sweeping the ship for additional hostiles and survivors," Crest assured her. "If your aide is alive, we'll find him." Laura let herself be guided toward the exit, her mind still reeling. The Empire had just saved her life. Their troops had stormed onto a colonial civilian vessel and fought with brutal efficiency to protect her. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it terrified her. Because now she owed them. Now the debt between the Colonial Fleet and the Empire had shifted from mutual necessity to personal obligation. And Laura Roslin, veteran of political maneuvering, knew exactly how dangerous that could be. "Imperial shuttle is away from Colonial 1, Gaeta reported. "They have the President. She's alive and uninjured." The collective sigh of relief that went through CIC was almost audible. Adama felt tension he hadn't realized he was carrying drain from his shoulders. "The Cylon raiders?" he asked. "Breaking off. They're descending back into the atmosphere." "Wait, no. They're changing course. Heading for open space." "Apollo, you're cleared to engage," Adama ordered. "Do not let those raiders escape." "Copy that, Galactica. All Vipers, weapons free." On the tactical display, the Colonial fighters converged on the fleeing raiders. But before they could close to firing range, the space around the Cylons lit up with emerald fire. The TIE fighters had engaged. "Those Imperial pilots move like nothing I've ever seen," Gaeta muttered, watching his sensors track the dogfight. "They're pulling maneuvers that should tear their ships apart." The raiders tried to evade, their organic mechanical brains calculating evasion patterns at machine speed. But the TIE pilots were faster, more aggressive, more ruthless. Within 30 seconds, 2 raiders were expanding clouds of debris. The third managed to fire its FTL drive, space folding around it as it prepared to jump. A single turbolaser bolt from the inexorable caught it mid-transit. The Raider exploded, its FTL field collapsing catastrophically and creating a brief tear in spacetime that registered on every sensor in the system before dissipating. Did they just? TIE stared at the displays. Did they just shoot a ship while it was jumping? Apparently, Gaeta confirmed, his voice carrying equal parts professional admiration and unease. Sir, that should be impossible. The timing, the targeting calculations, there's no way to predict exactly when and where a ship will materialize during jump. Unless you have sensors and weapons systems centuries ahead of ours, Adama said quietly. He turned to Duala. Get me Captain Kreel again. And someone find out where they're taking President Roslin. The Imperial shuttle is heading for the inexorable, sir, Gaeta reported. They're taking her to their sickbay for medical evaluation. Adama's jaw clenched. Like hell they are. Tell them to divert to Galactica immediately. Sir, Captain Kreel is hailing us now. Put him through. Kreel's face appeared on the main display, his expression professionally neutral. Admiral, I'm pleased to report President Roslin is safe and unharmed. However, given the stress of the encounter, I'm having her transported to our medical facilities for evaluation. Dr. Theron assures me she'll receive the best possible care. With respect, Captain, the President belongs with her people. Not aboard your vessel. With respect, Admiral, the President is in shock and requires immediate medical attention. My facilities are superior to yours, and she's already aboard my shuttle. Diverting now would only delay treatment. It was logical. It was reasonable. It was also a power play, whether Kreel intended it as such or not. Captain. Admiral, I'm not holding the President hostage, Kreel interrupted, his voice carrying an edge of impatience. She'll be returned to you within 2 hours, fully examined and cleared for duty. I'm simply ensuring that the leader of your people receives proper care after a traumatic incident. Surely you can appreciate the gesture. Adama wanted to refuse, wanted to demand Roslin's immediate return. But Kreel was right, she'd been through a terrifying ordeal, and Imperial medical technology could detect and treat conditions colonial medicine might miss. Including her cancer, which she'd been keeping secret from most of the fleet. 2 hours, Adama said. And Captain, thank you. Your troops saved her life. That won't be forgotten. They were simply doing their duty, Admiral. As were yours. Kreel out. The transmission ended, leaving Adama staring at the blank screen. He's got her, Tai said quietly. For 2 hours, the President of the Colonies is aboard an Imperial Star Destroyer, surrounded by their people, in their medical facilities. If they wanted to. They won't, Adama said, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. They need this alliance as much as we do. Taking the President hostage would destroy that. Would it? Tai challenged. Or would it just change the terms? We're already dependent on them for protection. Add political leverage to military superiority, and they could effectively control the entire fleet without firing a shot. Adama didn't have an answer for that. Because Tai was right. The Empire had just saved President Roslin's life. And in doing so, they'd demonstrated both their value as allies and their power as potential overlords. The question was which role they'd ultimately choose to play. Laura Roslin sat on the examination table, trying not to stare at the medical equipment that looked like something from a science fiction fantasy. Dr. Theron, a middle-aged human woman with the calm competence of a veteran physician, moved around her with a handheld scanner that apparently could diagnose everything from broken bones to cellular abnormalities without invasive procedures. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, but that's to be expected given the circumstances, Dr. Theron said, studying the scanner's readouts. No signs of physical trauma. Some stress hormone elevation, but nothing concerning. Overall, Madam President, you're remarkably healthy for someone who just survived a Cylon kidnapping attempt. Remarkable considering my cancer, you mean, Laura said flatly. Dr. Theron paused, genuine surprise crossing her face. Yes. I was going to mention that. The scanner detected abnormal cellular growth in your breast tissue. Stage 3, if I'm reading your biology correctly. You're being treated. Experimental Kamala extract from our Dr. Cottle. It's slowing the progression, but, Laura shrugged. We don't have the medical technology for aggressive treatment. Not anymore. Everything was lost in the fall. Dr. Theron set down the scanner and met Laura's eyes with an expression of professional sympathy. Madam President, with your permission, I could treat this. We have medical technology that could put your cancer into complete remission within weeks. Possibly cure it entirely within months. Laura felt her breath catch. You can cure cancer. Advanced cancer treatments are relatively routine in Imperial medicine. Bacta therapy combined with targeted radiation treatments and cellular regeneration stimulants. For someone in your condition, the prognosis would be excellent. It was everything Laura had hoped for since her diagnosis. A chance to live. A chance to lead her people without the constant shadow of death hanging over every decision. And all she had to do was accept Imperial medical assistance that would make her personally indebted to Captain Kreel and the Empire. Why? Laura asked. Why offer this to me specifically? You're treating our wounded, which is generous. But offering to cure the President's cancer, that's different. That's political. Dr. Theron's expression remained neutral, but Laura could see the calculation behind her eyes. Because Captain Kreel believes in stability. The Colonial Fleet needs strong leadership to survive. Losing you to a preventable disease would destabilize your people. That doesn't serve anyone's interests. So this is about maintaining order. Keeping the alliance functional. Isn't that reason enough? Dr. Theron countered. Madam President, I'm a physician, not a politician. My job is to preserve life where possible. Your life can be preserved. Whether you accept treatment is your choice. Laura considered the offer carefully. Accept, and she'd gain years, maybe decades, of life. She could lead her people to Earth, could help rebuild civilization, could see the promises she'd made fulfilled. But she'd also be accepting a debt that could never fully be repaid. The Empire would have leverage over her that went beyond military protection or medical assistance for injured pilots. They would have saved her life personally. I need time to think about it, Laura said finally. Of course. The offer remains open. Dar. Theron made a final note on her medical data pad. You're cleared to return to your duties. Though I would recommend rest and stress reduction where possible. In the middle of fleeing genocide and negotiating with an interdimensional empire? I'll get right on that. Dr. Theron smiled slightly. I've treated combat officers for years, Madam President. I understand the impossible nature of my recommendations. But I make them anyway. Kreel stood at his viewport, watching the Colonial Fleet organize itself around Ragnar Anchorage. Civilian ships docking with the station, military vessels taking up defensive positions, the organized chaos of a refugee fleet trying to build some semblance of stability. The Inquisitor entered without announcement, as was her habit. The President is being returned to Galactica, Valen said. Dr. Theron offered cancer treatment. She declined, for now. She's politically savvy, Kreel observed. She understands what accepting would mean. Do you? Kreel turned to face the Inquisitor. Explain. You just saved the President's life. Your troops risked themselves for a colonial leader. That changes the dynamic between our forces and theirs. They're no longer just refugees we're protecting, they're people we've invested ourselves in saving. That was the point. Demonstrate our value as allies. Or demonstrate that we're willing to bleed for them. Which makes them ours, Captain. Whether they realize it yet or not. Valen moved to the viewport, her reflection ghostly against the stars. The Force moves in unexpected ways. That Cylon attack was perfectly timed to create this situation. Almost as if. Don't, Kreel interrupted. Don't attribute cosmic significance to what was clearly a calculated military operation. The Cylons wanted to test us, to see if we protect colonial leadership or prioritize our own safety. We answered that question definitively. Yes. You did. Valen's tone suggested layers of meaning Kreel couldn't quite parse. And now the Colonial Fleet knows that the Empire protects its allies. Even at risk to Imperial personnel. Is that a problem? That depends on whether you intend this to remain an alliance or to become something else. An empire, perhaps. A new order built in this universe according to Imperial principles. Kreel considered that carefully. The hyperdrive was still weeks from repair, if it could be repaired at all to cross-dimensional boundaries. His crew was stranded, possibly permanently. The Colonial Fleet represented 50,000 people desperate for leadership and protection. And the Empire had always taught that from chaos came opportunity. I serve the Emperor, Kreel said carefully. But the Emperor is galaxies away. Here, in this universe, I have responsibilities to my crew first, and to the stability of this region second. If that means building an Imperial presence, establishing order, bringing civilization to this chaotic situation, then yes. That's exactly what I intend. Even if it means ruling over these people. The Empire doesn't rule. It brings order. If the Colonials choose to accept that order, to benefit from the stability and protection we provide, then everyone prospers. If they resist. Kreel let the implication hang. Then you enforce compliance, Valen finished. With compassion, I hope. But enforce it nonetheless. If necessary. A calm chime interrupted them. Captain, this is Lieutenant Varys. We've completed our analysis of the Cylon technology recovered from Colonial 1. Sir, you need to see this immediately. Kreel activated the comm. Understood. I'm on my way. He turned to Valen. Accompany me. If this is significant, I'll want your perspective. They found Varys in the analysis laboratory, surrounded by the dismantled remains of a Cylon Centurion. The machine had been methodically disassembled, its components spread across examination tables. Report, Kreel ordered. Sir, the Cylons are far more advanced than we initially assessed. Varys activated a holographic display showing the Centurion's internal structure. This isn't just a robot. It's a hybrid system. Mechanical components interfaced with what I can only describe as biological computing networks. They're using organic neural tissues to process information alongside conventional computer systems. Biomechanical integration, Kreel said, his mind already working through the implications. Like the Yuuzhan Vong biotechnology in the historical records. Similar, but different. The Vong rejected mechanical technology entirely. The Cylons have merged organic and mechanical in ways that create exponential improvements in processing speed and adaptive learning. Sir, these machines can literally evolve. Each engagement teaches them, improves their combat algorithms, makes them more effective. So the next time we fight them, Kreel said slowly, they'll have adapted to our tactics. Yes, sir. And there's more. Varys highlighted a section of the Centurion's neural tissue. I found this in the biological components, chemical signatures that don't match anything in colonial biology. Sir, I think the Cylons have been experimenting with human genetic material. Possibly trying to create humanoid infiltrators that can pass undetected among the colonial population. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanoid Cylons, the Inquisitor murmured. Machines that look, sound, and think like humans. They could be anywhere. Anyone. Admiral Adama needs to know about this, Kreel said. Immediately. If the Cylons have infiltration units already deployed in the fleet, then this entire alliance could be compromised, Valen finished. Captain, we should also consider the possibility that the Cylons' interest in you, in Imperial technology, goes beyond simple tactical advantage. If they could acquire our systems, study them, integrate them with their own adaptive networks, they could become nearly unstoppable, Kreel completed the thought. His tactical mind raced through scenarios, each more concerning than the last. Varis, encrypt all technical data about Imperial systems. New security protocols effective immediately. Nothing leaves this ship without my personal authorization. And get me Admiral Adama. This intelligence changes everything. The assembled leadership sat in tense silence as Kreel finished his briefing. Adama, TIE, Roslin, Apollo, Starbuck, and several other senior officers had all heard the evidence, seen the analysis, and understood the horrifying implications. Humanoid Cylons, Roslin said quietly. Machines that look exactly like us. They could be in this fleet right now. In this room. It's possible, Kreel confirmed. The biomechanical integration suggests they've been working toward this for some time. Your people wouldn't be able to detect them with conventional means. But you could, Adama said, his eyes sharp. Your medical scanners, your advanced technology, you could identify these infiltrators. Potentially. If we knew what biological markers to look for. But without a confirmed humanoid Cylon to examine, Kreel spread his hands. We're working from theory and extrapolation. So what do we do? TIE demanded. Screen every person in the fleet. Create a witch hunt based on Imperial technology we barely understand. No, Roslin said firmly. We can't tear ourselves apart with paranoia. That's exactly what the Cylons would want, turn us against each other while they watch from the shadows. Madam President is correct, Kreel agreed. But we do need protocols. Security measures that protect both our peoples without creating mass hysteria. Joint security teams, Adama suggested. Colonial personnel working alongside Imperial forces. Regular but discreet medical screenings using your technology. Anyone in sensitive positions, military command, government leadership, critical technical roles, get screened first. That's reasonable, Roslin said. But Captain, I need your assurance that this data, this screening process, won't be used for any purpose other than Cylon detection. No intelligence gathering on colonial personnel. No profiling for other purposes. Kreel met her gaze steadily. You have my word. The Empire's interest is in mutual survival, not in surveilling your people. Do we have your word that you'll submit to the same screening? Starbuck asked suddenly, her tone challenging. How do we know the Cylons haven't already infiltrated your crew? Maybe that's how they knew exactly when and where to attack Colonial 1. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The stormtroopers standing guard tensed, their hands drifting toward weapons. The Inquisitor stirred in the shadows, and Adama could swear the air itself felt heavier. But Kreel simply smiled. An excellent question, Lieutenant. Yes, I'll submit to screening. As will my entire crew. The Inquisitor's force abilities provide some protection against infiltration, she can sense deception and artificiality in ways your technology cannot. But redundancy in security protocols is always wise. He stood, the movement casual but commanding attention. Admiral, Madam President, I propose we begin immediate implementation of joint screening. I'll assign Dr. Theron to work with your Dr. Cottle on developing detection protocols. In the meantime, I recommend we accelerate our repair schedule and resupply operations. The Cylons now know we're here. They know we're working together. And they've seen our capabilities. Which means they'll adapt, Adama finished. The next attack will be different. More sophisticated. Precisely. We have a window, days, maybe a week, before they return in force. We need to use that time to fortify our position, complete repairs, and establish security protocols that protect both our peoples. Agreed, Rosalind said, also standing. Let's get to work. As the meeting broke up, Adama caught Kreel's arm. Captain, a word in private. They stepped aside, leaving the others to file out. When they were alone except for the Inquisitor and TIE, Adama spoke quietly. Thank you. For saving President Rosalind. For sharing this intelligence about humanoid Cylons. For treating this alliance as more than just convenient arrangement. Kreel studied the older man for a moment. Admiral, I won't pretend the Empire's motives are purely altruistic. We benefit from this alliance. But I also recognize that your people have suffered enormously. You're fighting for survival against an enemy that wants nothing less than your complete extinction. The Empire was built on the principle of bringing order to chaos. Sometimes that means conquest. Sometimes it means protection. Here, in your situation, it means both. And when your ship is repaired? When you can leave this universe and return to your own? I don't know, Kreel admitted. The hyperdrive damage may be irreparable in a way that prevents dimensional travel. We may be stranded here permanently. If that's the case, he glanced at the Inquisitor, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Then we'll need to build something lasting. An order that protects not just 50,000 refugees, but whatever civilization emerges from this crisis. The question is whether you and your people can accept imperial methods alongside colonial values. That sounds like a long-term proposal, Captain. It is, Admiral. Because I don't think either of us can afford short-term thinking anymore. The Cylons are evolving. They're adapting. Soon they'll be as advanced as we are, possibly more so. When that happens, conventional warfare won't be enough. We'll need a new approach. A new alliance. Perhaps even a new kind of civilization. Adama considered that carefully. The idea of merging colonial and imperial cultures, of building something that incorporated both democratic principles and authoritarian efficiency, was both appealing and terrifying. But Kreel was right about one thing: conventional approaches hadn't saved the colonies from extinction. Maybe it was time to try something new. Let's start with the screening protocols, Adama said. Prove we can work together on security without compromising each other's autonomy. If we can manage that, maybe we can build towards something more. Agreed. Kreel extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Adama shook it. It was a gesture that meant nothing and everything: two commanders from different universes, different philosophies, different cultures, agreeing to try something unprecedented. Whether it would lead to salvation or subjugation remained to be seen. Ragnar Anchorage had transformed from a derelict munitions depot into a functioning base of operations. Colonial civilian ships had docked for repairs. Military vessels had resupplied from the station's stored ammunition. And the inexorable hung in permanent orbit, its massive bulk both protector and reminder of the changed reality. In the makeshift briefing room, a combination of colonial and imperial technology that somehow managed to function despite the aesthetic clash. The joint leadership gathered for their weekly strategic meeting. Screening protocols are now in place across 80% of the fleet, Dr. Cottle reported, his gravelly voice carrying grudging approval. No Cylon infiltrators detected so far, but we're still working through the civilian population. Dr. Theron's technology makes the process faster than I thought possible. Repairs to the Inexorable's hyperdrive are progressing, Chief Engineer Vastil added via hologram from the Star Destroyer. However, Captain Kreel's assessment was correct: dimensional transit capability may be permanently compromised. We can restore standard hyperspace capability, but returning to our origin universe, he shook his head. Unknown. Possibly impossible. Then we plan for permanent residence, Kreel said. There was resignation in his voice, but also determination. Which means we need to discuss long-term strategic objectives. Finding Earth, Rosalind said immediately. That remains our primary goal. A new homeworld for humanity. Agreed. But we also need to consider economic sustainability, resource acquisition, and defensive capabilities beyond what we currently possess. Kreel activated a star chart, a hybrid of colonial maps and Imperial sensor data. I propose we establish waypoints. Locations where we can build infrastructure, create supply depots, potentially establish permanent settlements. Not just running toward Earth, but building a civilization capable of surviving when we get there. That's ambitious, Adama said. It would require years of coordinated effort. Yes. But consider the alternative, arriving at Earth as a desperate refugee fleet with depleted resources, aging ships, and no industrial capacity. We'd be starting from nothing. Better to build as we go. Create a network of colonies, stations, and resources that can support a growing population. The Empire building an empire, TIE muttered. How appropriate. Or the colonies building a future, Roslin countered. Captain Kreel has a point. We can't just run forever. We need to start building again. The discussion continued for another hour, plans forming, objections raised, compromises reached. It was messy, inefficient, and involved far more debate than any Imperial operation would tolerate. But it was also something new, a genuine collaboration between two civilizations trying to forge a common future. As the meeting adjourned, Adama found himself standing at the viewport with President Roslin, watching Colonial and Imperial ships work side by side on repair operations. Do you think this can work? Roslin asked quietly. Long term, I mean. Can we really build something with them? I don't know, Adama admitted. But 3 weeks ago, I would have said it was impossible. Now, he gestured at the scene before them. Now we have colonial pilots training with Imperial squadrons. Our doctors working alongside theirs. Joint security patrols protecting the fleet. It's not perfect, but it's working. Because we need each other. What happens when that need diminishes? When we're stable, when Earth is found, when the Cylons are defeated? Then we find out if this alliance is based on necessity or something more substantial. Adama turned to face her. But that's a problem for the future. Right now, we focus on survival. On building something that can last long enough to face those questions. Roslin smiled slightly. Ever the pragmatist. Someone has to be. They stood in companionable silence, watching the stars and the ships and the fragile alliance that might just save them all, or doom them to a different kind of subjugation. Either way, the Colonial Fleet and the Galactic Empire had become something neither could have predicted, partners in an uncertain future, bound together by necessity, survival, and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, they could build something better than what they'd lost. In the depths of space, Cylon-based stars tracked the fleet from a distance, analyzing, learning, adapting. The machines had seen Imperial technology now. They'd measured its capabilities. And they were evolving to counter it. The war was far from over. But the sides had changed, the stakes had shifted, and the galaxy far, far away had merged with a universe of desperate survivors in ways that would echo across both realities for generations to come. The collision of two universes, Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica, created something neither could have anticipated. The Galactic Empire, represented by the stranded Star Destroyer Inexorable, brought overwhelming military power and advanced technology to a refugee fleet fleeing genocide. The Colonial Fleet brought local knowledge, desperate courage, and the raw human determination to survive against impossible odds. Together, they forged an alliance born of necessity but evolving into something more complex. Captain Kreel demonstrated that Imperial methods could coexist with colonial values when survival demanded it. President Roslin and Admiral Adama learned that accepting help from an authoritarian power didn't require surrendering democratic principles, at least not immediately. The Cylons, meanwhile, adapted and evolved, their biomechanical nature allowing them to learn from each engagement. The revelation of potential humanoid infiltrators added a new dimension of paranoia and threat to an already desperate situation. And somewhere in the background, the Force began to stir in a universe that had never known it, suggesting that this collision of realities might have consequences neither side yet understood. The future remained uncertain. Earth was still a distant dream. The Cylons continued their relentless pursuit. The inexorable ability to return home remained in doubt. But the Colonial Fleet had gained powerful allies, and the Empire had found a cause worth fighting for beyond simple orders. Whether this alliance would lead to salvation or a different kind of tyranny remained to be seen. But for now, 50,000 refugees and 9,000 Imperial crew members faced the darkness together, building something new from the ashes of what both had lost. The stars of two universes had aligned. What emerged from that alignment would determine the fate of humanity, both colonial and imperial, for generations to come.